Are you struggling with large open holes in your Jasmine work? Let's fix that now. My name is Makalani and I'm here to help you crack the code and fall in love with the Jasmine Stitch. And today I'm going to be sharing my 3 very best tips for getting nice and small flower centers. If you are totally new to the Jasmine Stitch, I recommend that you start with my video, Learn the Jasmine Stitch in One Night. I've linked to it below, and there you'll get all the basics for working the Jasmine Stitch. Once you've completed that, you'll be ready for this video. So let me show you what I mean with nice and neat and small flower centers.
When working the Jasmine Stitch, we want our flower centers nice and small, like what you see here. But often, in the beginning, when we're just learning the stitch, the openings can become pretty large, and they can turn out to be holes in our work.
The goal is clear. We want to get nice and small flower centers. And my first tip for you is to use a hook that is significantly smaller or thinner than what you usually would for the yarn you're using. The reason for that is that when we're building the Jasmine Stitch, we insert the hook through the same spot, which we call the flower center, in our work a lot of times. And if your hook is large, it's going to force that flower center open and make it a hole in your work. To allow the flower center to remain small, even though we pushed through it a lot, you need to use a small hook. Okay, tip number 2. You want to use compressible yarn. This term might be completely new to you, but it's really important in the Jasmine Stitch. Compressible yarn is yarn that looks nice and thick, but goes completely flat when you squeeze it between your fingers. The reason we want the yarn to be compressible is that a lot of loops come together in the flower center in the middle of the jasmine flower. So if your yarn does not compress well, the flower center is going to become really crowded and it's going to be really hard to get it nice and small. Our next and final tip is about how you tighten the working yarn while you secure the loops of the petals in the flower center. And this is a little bit more complex, so I'm gonna walk you through it in detail. But before we dive in, here's a little heads up. Okay, this is a safe space, so I'm gonna warn you, in this video, I'm gonna be talking about how you hold your working yarn. So I know there are a million ways to hold the working yarn, and everyone has their own style, which is totally fine. But for the Jasmine Stitch, I find that holding the yarn in a particular way can be super useful and make it easier to get nice and small flower centers. So bear with me while I show you how you can hold the working yarn. And if this is useful to you, wonderful. And if not, feel free to stick with what is comfortable for you. And also, I'd love to hear from you. Let me know below what way works best for you. So, you have been warned, let us dive in.
I recommend that you place the yarn over the fingers of your left hand like this. And the reason is that you can now pull it out here with very little friction. And if you want to increase the friction, you can simply tighten your grip and pull like this. So you have a one-handed pull, so you can pull at the right times. This is really important because we are going to be building petals with a very loose tension. But when we're going to secure the petals, we want to increase the tension a lot. So to make that possible for you, I want you to be able to pull just like this. So even if you don't normally hold the yarn over your fingers like this on your left hand, I recommend you try it when you're learning the Jasmine Stitch.
So that's all you need to know about how you can hold the working yarn. But remember, this is just a suggestion. There are no laws governing how to hold your yarn, and if you want to hold it in a different way, feel free to do that. Now, let's move on and let me show you how to get nice and small flower centers by tightening the working yarn at just the right spots.
The trick to getting small flower centers is to keep the working yarn loose when you're building the petals and tighten it at the right times when securing the petals. So now we have the petals ready to be secured. We're gonna yarn over and hold the yarn below the hook and pull through all the loops. Now tighten, so that the little opening that you're going to go into to get the yarn is pretty tight. Then you tighten again. Yarn over, go through both loops on the hook and tighten, chain and tighten. I'm going to show you one more time the spots to tighten. So now we're working with loose working yarn as we're building petals. Now we're ready to secure. So pull through, tighten, get the yarn, tighten, get the yarn through both loops, tighten, chain one, and tighten. This is going to give you a nice and tight little single crochet stitch here, very small flower center, compared to the larger openings here if you don't tighten at these spots. So the difference is really, really big. So try this out. I hope it works for you.
That's it! To get nice and small flower centers, you need to use a small hook, compressible yarn, and you need to remember to tighten the working yarn really, really well a few times while securing the loops of the petals. Thank you so much for using my videos to learn, and until next time, happy Jasmine stitching!